Is it possible that a single 48-lap session has rewritten the internal hierarchy of the world champion team? What if I told you that McLaren engineers are more attentive to Oscar Piastri's instructions than to world champion Lando Norris? What happened in Barcelona was not a simple test. It was a silent earthquake. At first glance, it might seem that the preseason tests in Formula One are monotonous days. Laps without direct competition, without the tension of a classification, and with a flat narrative for the general public. But those who really know this sport know that it is precisely these days where the cameras rarely capture the background, where the most important decisions of the year are written. And in Barcelona, during the private tests at the end of January 2026, Oscar Piastri became the epicenter of a conversation that until then was believed to be closed. McLaren arrived at that test with unquestionable status. Two-time world champions. Lando Norris debuting the number 1 in his car after beating Max Verstappen in Abu Dhabi by just 2 points in a historic 2025 season finale. The British team had reached its modern peak, and everything indicated that they would continue the line of dominance marked by their meticulous technical planning. However, in the world of Formula One, stability is often an illusion. Under the new 2026 technical regulations, the category has undergone the biggest readjustment since 2014. The car has been redesigned from the ground up, 10 centimeters narrower, 30 kilograms lighter, with a loss of up to 30% of aerodynamic load due to the complete elimination of ground effect, and a more equal hybrid distribution of power between the thermal engine and the electrical system. Power units now deliver approximately 50% of total power through electrical systems, a silent revolution that has forced teams to rethink everything, from chassis philosophy to energy use strategy per lap. In this radically new context, it was not enough to be the fastest. It was not enough to have the experience of having won either. What is required now is understanding, adaptability, accuracy and feedback. And in that field, Oscar Piastri began to stand out without looking for it. While Ferrari racked up mileage and Mercedes focused its efforts on high-load simulations, McLaren took a more measured approach. Only 291 laps in total during the first days, a number that for many was alarming. But what the outside world didn't know was that inside the Woking pit, each of those laps had been carefully planned to obtain as much quality information as possible. And in that plan, Piastri's role began to grow unexpectedly. This is not the typical story of the young driver who impresses with speed. It is the story of the driver who understands what the car wants to tell him. Because in an environment where data rules and engineers look for patterns in telemetry graphs rather than lap times, the observations a driver offers can be invaluable. And Piastri, according to multiple internal sources, wasn't just providing observations. He was describing with surgical clarity technical phenomena that others could barely detect. McLaren's internal hierarchy is not built solely by what happens on a Sunday in the race. It is built in the laboratory, in the simulation meetings, in the post-test data analysis sessions. And that is where Oscar began to move pieces that, in any other context, were firmly anchored by the figure of world champion Norris. During technical meetings after the first day of testing, engineers began to realize that Piastri's level of precision was extraordinarily useful. Furthermore, his suggestions on rake adjustments, braking balance, and differential maps were not simply feel suggestions. They were well-laid hypotheses about how the car would respond to certain changes. Suddenly, the team found itself with two valuable sources of information. But one was beginning to set the tone. All of this occurs in an environment loaded with expectations. McLaren knows that the margin of error in this new regulation is minimal. Those who misunderstand the new era will spend years trying to make up ground. In this context, technical leadership is not assigned by status, but by measurable results and feedback. Piastri, with just 128 laps in total, had generated an amount of actionable data that eclipsed what was anticipated by the technical department itself. But this is where the real change begins. Because in a structure like McLaren's, deeply hierarchical and traditionally aligned with its first driver, the fact that a second driver begins to gain weight in strategic decisions is not something that goes unnoticed. It wasn't for the engineers, and it certainly wasn't for Lando Norris, who according to internal leaks reacted with some discomfort when he noticed that some meetings were beginning to revolve more around Oscar's reports than his own. This is the kind of detail that fans rarely notice, but that within a team can generate hidden power dynamics. We are not talking about a direct fight between colleagues. There is no open confrontation. What there is something more subtle, more powerful, a change in perception. Suddenly, everyone in the garage no longer automatically looks to Norris when car development is discussed. Some look at Oscar. In Formula One, test days are made to collect data, verify correlations between wind tunnels, CFD and track, and above all to accumulate error-free mileage. The greater the number of turns, the greater the volume of useful information. That's the standard logic. But what happened to Oscar Piastri during the second day of testing at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya broke that logic completely. Because 48 laps, executed with surgical precision, were enough to trigger a technical rethink within the McLaren team. That Thursday, January 29th, the Australian took to the track in the morning with the MCL 40, a car that represents a philosophical leap in the team's aerodynamic conception. Less downforce, 50-50 power distribution between thermal and electric motor, significant reduction in chassis width, and a more compact internal architecture to compensate for the loss of ground effect. It was a completely different car than the one Piastri had driven during his first 2 years in Formula One. From his first stint, Piastri did not behave like a driver adapting to the car. He did it as if he already understood it from within. Instead of wandering around aimlessly or asking for conservative adjustments, he began to profile the car's anomalous behavior in real time. Observed a subtle but consistent oversteer pattern at the start of turn 4, especially under lateral load changes. He identified how the electrical power delivery map was not optimally synchronized with the tractive torque at the exit of turn 9. He pointed out a disconnection between the front wing and rear axle response in high compression zones. These are not conventional comments. It's not what you'd normally hear from a driver on their first contact with a completely redesigned car. Most talk about generic sensations, the car understeers a little, the traction is not bad. Piastri's was different. Multidimensional analysis that connected sensations with specific technical data. He even proposed variations in the front suspension height to compensate for a drop in load during medium braking, something that requires a level of sensitivity and understanding that is unusual even in experienced drivers. But the most revealing thing would come after the stoppage forced by a failure in the fuel system. McLaren had to completely stop the morning session, dismantle the car and check its internal power system. What could have been a wasted day turned into a gold mine. While the car was in the garage, the technical team focused on the data generated by the first 48 laps. And that was where the inevitable comparisons began. Piastri had clocked a 1 minute and 18.419 seconds before the failure. A solid time, yes, but nothing spectacular at first glance. However, that time was 0.3 faster than Lando Norris' best lap the day before, who had had a clean 77-lap day, with similar conditions and no interruptions. The comparison, while not perfect, sparked a buzz inside the garage. Not because Oscar was faster could be due to better track temperature, less fuel or other factors, but because he did it in less than half the time on the track and under operating pressure. But that was only the beginning. What really surprised the engineers was the degree of correspondence between what Piastri was saying on the radio and what the car's sensors were recording. Every observation of his found support in telemetry. Every entry point, every weight transition, every aerodynamic balance change. It became apparent that he was not describing the car, he was reading its behavior as if he himself were an extension of the data system. That coherence between what is felt and what is recorded is extremely rare. And it is pure gold in an environment where development changes are designed based on micro details that the pilot detects before the computers. Internally, engineers began using Piastri's data as a reference to validate simulations, even above those generated by Norris. His sensitivity became a technical asset, not just a sporting one. In some areas, such as detecting irregular peaks in ERS deployment at the exit of slow corners, Oscar's feedback allowed the team to adjust elements of the car's software without the need for further testing. This is extremely rare. In an environment where everything is based on simulation, finding that a driver can predict structural problems in the car based on his driving is not only useful, it is revolutionary. Piastri has shown that he is not only up to that conversation but could lead it. In Barcelona, he didn't run more than anyone else, he didn't lead timetables, he didn't make headlines. But what it did do was leave measurable, useful, and transformative technical evidence. And that, in Formula One, is worth more than any isolated fast lap. The 2026 season is just beginning, but the pieces are already moving. And in a championship as tight as the one projected this year with Ferrari revitalized, Mercedes in the process of consolidation, and Red Bull seeking its restructuring after internal turbulence, every detail matters. The ability to adapt, the value of technical feedback and silent leadership can be the keys that separate those who fight for victories from those who dominate championships. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.